Thanks for joining us today on The Perfect X. My name is Sherry, and this is my co-host Leigh.
Hello.
And today we are talking about games, and
Monopoly.
not. No, I was just gonna say not like the board games.
Those are the best kind.
I know,
Not
or
like this
Uno.
bullshit games you're talking of.
I know we're talking about the ones that are never fun, but unfortunately, we all go through it.
hmm
I thought of this one because I think it was like on the first or second podcast, and it's so true what you said. You were like, "Oh, you love the hunt," and
hmm
it's so true because I did like explicitly, absolutely love the hunt. I even dated someone only because he told me once I would never date you, and I was like, I didn't even like him until he said it. I was like, oh. I was like before that he asked for my number and I laughed. And then I saw, yeah, I was like, I saw him at another party and I wasn't even that young. I was 24, 23, 20, yeah, 23, 24.
hmm
And he asked for my number and I thought it was literally the funniest thing I'd ever heard. Like I couldn't stop laughing.
You gotta
And
admire. You gotta give him credit for taking a swing at it, though.
well, afterwards and like a while later, like we kept bumping into each other at parties and stuff. And then like something he said, I can't remember, but like somebody else said something and he was like, "What? I would never fucking date Sherry. Like she is not girlfriend material." And I was like, "What? What? Whoa." And then he was literally like he could have been Brad Pitt. And to be honest, he was like the ugliest guy ever, but he was like Brad Pitt to me. And so I had to really like learn how to not play games. And I was so fucking good at it. Like pro. I was a pro cheater, pro manipulator, pro like I had that shit down packed. I mean, I got to the point where I would like blatantly tell guys, I'm gonna date other people, but you can hang out. Like I was so good at it. But yeah, I think it's something that most of us mature out of, but sometimes, and I'm experiencing this now as I get older, and like we'll discuss it all in detail, but I think you're supposed to grow out of it. It's kind of like that mean girl era when you're 16 and like you think it's so cool in high school to be mean, and then you're like realize as you get older that only insecure people act that way. Like you're
Yeah.
like, this is actually big sign of insecurity. Like at 37, if I see someone be a total bitch to someone, I'm like, ooh, you must have some real insecurity issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is something we all phase out of. But you're not like, well, I don't think you're like that. Did
No,
you
I,
ever have that phase?
I was just gonna say I've always like, and people have said it to me that I grew up with. They're like, you would never like go out of your way to be sort of mean to someone, and I never did feel like I was like that with like friends or like in like the dating world. I would never, try to go out of my way to sort of mess around with anybody. Like, I was always tried to be very upfront if I ever got to a point in a relationship where like which we talked about before, where I didn't like see it going anywhere. I would try to be really honest like right away about that. And then same with if I didn't see it going anywhere from the get go. Like I've had one or two times where someone was interested and I was just like, it's just not going to happen. Like, or it's just, I can't remember. I mean, I know I've like had with girlfriends, I've split up with them, but there has been instances like once or twice where like I've met people and there could have been like a relationship, but like I was the one to be like, no, I don't. Like, for example, someone I knew wanted to do a lot of traveling and that kind of thing. I was like, that's like, this has happened to me more than once, but one person I knew that I was friends with, and I was like, I wouldn't even entertain dating them because I know that they want to travel and do this and that, and it was just like nowhere
Travel's
from the
like
get go.
your big thing. I swear to God, every time you're like,
Yeah,
a girl's not dateable, bitch likes to get on an airplane. I
yeah,
am
well,
not.
for sure, because I dated that girl who wanted to travel, and it was a nightmare. So I was always shied away from anyone else after that had a desire to like travel because I was like, I've been down this road, and it's a nowhere road.
But also, and I want to say this because I feel like you're the majority male. I don't think most males play games. So I actually think you're like the epiphany of like when you say a guy's guy, that's you. So what's also interesting is even when you are interested in someone, like when you were interested in Taryn, you just blatantly told her. You're like,
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
where you're at. You didn't try to play games, which is like I would say is like the 80% of males, especially back then. I think a lot
hmm
of guys as they get older and they've been online now are starting to learn some games because it just doesn't work out for them and they in their favorite like people aren't as simple in the dating world as it was back then.
Yeah.
So I noticed that a lot of like real men, and the funny thing is, I as much as like now I can't stand games, and we'll go through that, but I really, really admire men that never had that in them, and you can really see it when you're dating today. Like, it's just if they're interested, they ask you out, and they are so blunt about it.
Hmm.
And if they want to go out a second time, they're so blunt about it. If they're not, they just kind of like, they just don't further interact,
Yeah.
or they just tell you. And
Hmm.
it is, I would say, guys do play games less, but the ones that do know how to play games play them to a new
And I'm sure
level.
there's a lot of underlying like psychological reasons why a guy would do that. Like maybe doesn't want to get close to people or whatever the reason is. But yeah, I was always felt that I was fairly honest with people if I was interested in them or not interested for whatever
Mhm,
reason. Yeah.
mhm. What
Because
about when girls were playing games? Do you feel like you could tell?
I didn't get a lot of that. Like most, I'm trying to think, like there was,
Do you think
I
you
mean,
would tell? Like, let's say if a girl today, like, do you think
yeah,
that it's pretty
I
fairly
think
obvious?
so because I see friends that are going through some of that stuff and it's like, the guy or the girl can't commit seemingly, and it seems like a BS reason. So I'm like, well, I wouldn't even hang around and entertain that. Like if they're like, oh yeah, like, some delay, like we've talked about people that like won't have you over to their place. Or there's just like weird hurdles that they keep coming up. I think being older now, I would like to think that I would recognize those like pretty because when other people tell me about things like that, like I had a friend at work and she's like, oh yeah, like this guy, like, he'll text me like good morning and try and sort of keep me on the string, but then like, he'll sort of like fizzle out. And then I think when he gets the impression I've kind of moved on, he'll sort of like come back in and start messaging me. I'm like, man, fuck that. I'm like, if the guy doesn't want to date you, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but don't try and keep you on the hook too. So I feel like to answer your question, I kind of feel like I see those flags because I see what my friends go through, and it kind of seems obvious to me, but it's always different when you're in that situation.
Well, there's that saying that like if someone is interested in you, no matter what, they will find the time. And if they're
Yeah.
not interested in you, they'll make excuses like I gotta open the fridge, I can't talk.
Exactly,
You know,
yeah.
you
It's
know?
just yeah, like, just if you're gonna do it, do it. Like, you'll find the time to do whatever you wanna do, There's people that, like The Rock, like, look at how busy that guy is, he still gets to the fucking gym, right, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it's true, and I'm a big believer in that, and it's actually interesting because I've actually evolved out of that. So, and I kind of like let's start from the beginning. Like games have actually changed today than what they were back then.
Mhm.
Because like now we have the online presence, so it's so much harder, right? Because even if you say you're one where you might post a photo and you might be somewhere else, so it's a whole different type of game playing. But when
Yeah.
I was younger, I remember like my number one game was that I was always dating more than one person. And it was also great for me because I got to experience a lot and it's also what I wanted. But a big part of that also had to do with insecurity. Like I didn't realize until later, like if you have to have so many guys around you, and you see this a lot actually with men, they'll date so many different girls. It actually is a sign that it's not always like, I mean, there is a part of love of wanting to experience like a lot of it. I would say 50% of it, I really wanted to see what's out there. But
Mhm.
another 50% was I couldn't handle being with just one person because I wanted to come off like I could get so many.
Right.
And I think that's a big thing of insecurity and a game that we play often.
Mhm.
But that was like back in the day what you did. Like I remember when I dated someone like way back when he was the one that was like, I would never date you. He was known for dating a lot of girls, and I was known for dating a lot of guys. And
Mhm.
so when he said it to me, and he was like, I don't want a girlfriend. I'm like totally like I'm a player. I can get all these girls kind of thing. It really attracted to me. And I was too immature to realize that is such a red flag, like wanting what you can't have
Yeah.
or
It's probably
assume you
just
can't have.
the confidence factor was probably appealing, like, 'cause that's obviously, like, a confident attitude, so I could
Yeah.
see that being, to
Well,
appealing to someone, right?
it wasn't really confident though, if you think about it. I used to think I was so confident too. Like at the time, I genuinely believed I was so confident because I wasn't
Mhm.
that available. But actually, as you get older, you realize real confident people don't need to seem unavailable. They don't
Yeah.
need to portray some sort of image. They just are who they are,
Mhm.
you know?
Oh, yeah.
Um, And it's really interesting, like, it used to be so appealing as a game, but I noticed too, like, another thing that people do in game playing today is like, and I don't do this because I don't like to text at all. I don't like to be on phone calls, but I do know this happens quite often. Some people don't actually want to meet up, they just really need the attention.
Yeah.
And so they won't actually ask you on a date. They'll just keep, and I just actually recently had this guy like kept messaging, and I also have a girlfriend that just went through this, but they made plans to meet up and he bailed because of whatever. And then they made another plan, and he bailed because of whatever.
Mhm.
But he was so available to message. And I've had that too. Like a guy like is always messaging, he messages nonstop, telling about his day. And then you realize like this person just needs attention. Like they don't really have that many people obviously to talk to, or maybe they do and they just need more.
Yeah.
They have no intention on taking it further. And that's actually sort of a game because it's manipulative. It's like feeding their ego for the attention and the time passing, but they have no intention on actually committing. And these are like red flags that people need to be aware of. Like if you're talking to someone for 3 days and they haven't made any plans to meet up, or if they've canceled twice, just move on. Like
Yeah.
there is no intention for that person. Like you're not on there for a pen pal. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That's what I was saying about my friend at work. I'm like, this guy's obviously like just a time waster and he wants to keep you on the hook, right? Because whenever she sort of goes, and she made that observation herself too. She's like, whenever she kind of goes silent or gets busy or whatever, then he sort of resurfaces. And it's like, and for whatever the motivation, like you say, he might just want someone to chat with, or God only knows. But like those people are, yeah, if that's not, you're both not on the same page and you're just wasting people's time.
And there's so many different forms of games. Some of them are to waste people's time, like to get the energy, sorry, the attention.
Yeah.
So they're just wasting your time. Some of them are like dating you and more people just so they can get different types of attention. Like they actually go out with a bunch of people. They don't want to be seen with just one. They want other people to feel like they can get a bunch of people.
Hmm.
These are all insecurities, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not working on yourself. And instead it's like getting other people to feed what you're lacking as your own confidence, you know?
I imagine a lot
Um,
of it is people are unaware of. Like if you have some sort of intimacy issues or commitment issues or whatever you want to call it, and it may sort of manifest itself as like games, like someone doesn't want to get that serious. But I bet you a majority of them have like way more below the surface that's like causing that.
that is true because just like I said, like 50% of it was me being interested in like what's out there, and the other 50% was definitely insecurity I didn't even know I had.
Yeah.
At the time,
So if
I
you're
would
putting
have
up
never even thought about it.
a reason to push someone back and have like walls up, I imagine then it I imagine a majority of the time you would, if you dug deep enough, you'd find that person has something going on that's causing them to act like that, but they're probably not aware of it.
Yeah, yeah. I had one recently, like, where a guy, I think, felt like he wasn't good enough because he was coming from a divorce, and I don't have that baggage, but I actually didn't mind it. I actually didn't judge him for it.
Mhm.
But I probably made a couple jokes that made it seem like I was.
Right.
And then I made jokes like he had no friends, just me being my sarcastic self, but he laughed and I didn't think I was actually being offensive.
Yeah.
But I noticed afterwards, like if he called me, he'd only call me if he was like at a bar, like where I couldn't hear him, or he would call me like if he was out with a bunch of friends. Like he would never just call me before he'd call me like to have a conversation when it's like
Mhm.
quiet and we can actually hear each other.
Yeah.
And then after I had made those jokes, he would clearly only call me when he was like really surrounded by people.
Yeah.
And I realized that like it was him feeling like my judge, like I was actually judging him. And then became a sort of a game to him. And I mean, he's in his late 40s. So I kind of told him, like, hey, I'm really sorry for the jokes. I didn't actually mean it.
Mhm.
And I think we're at an age that, like, when we kind of, or say, like, we apologize, people can have a conversation.
Yeah.
But I think when you're so insecure and maybe unaware, he was like, "What are you talking about? Like, it's not true. I've just been so busy. I've just been so busy." And it's like he couldn't own up to it, and I found that so unattractive. I thought, like, at 40 something, you can't just be like, "Hey, you know what? Like, I didn't. That's I. Maybe you could even don't want to own up to it, but you could say I didn't notice I did that, but then not carry on doing it. He carried on doing it,
I think a
and it's
lot
like,
of people have like just a ton of issues and things they're not aware of. Like it's rare that people, go to counseling and like work on their own stuff. So I imagine so much, like I was saying, I imagine so many of these things manifest themselves in like funny ways, like commitment issues or whatever, playing games, right? But or even like the confidence thing. Like I could see a guy who wasn't so confident like taking your jokes to heart, whereas like a person that's maybe more confident or more sure of themselves would just laugh or brush it off. Some people are very sensitive to that, like they can make jokes, but they can't have one made about themselves. And they
yeah,
feel like
that's
I
true.
work with a guy like that. Like he kind of like has to. like be a tough guy and like sort of macho and whatever. And it's like, and like you've mentioned too, like people that are typically a certain way don't feel the need to act a certain way. They're just like, I am who I am.
Mhm.
I don't go around trying to sort of, I don't think, try to be anything, act tough or, I make jokes with my friends and coworkers and back and forth. I don't feel like the need to act like a big macho guy, to prove anything, but I do see that. And imagine if you're dating a guy that's not so sure of himself, then, you make some jokes. Some people would laugh and other people, they take it too seriously, I think.
And again, it's true. It's like it kind of goes back to what are you aware of? Like you actually said something else that is true too, like commitment issues. Like I've worked on the games, like I can't handle games at all, and I've actually become the exact opposite. Like I'm not even sort of manipulative anymore. Back in the day, I would like try to see how far I can go with something, and now I'm just like so blunt, like so. Not that I wasn't always blunt, but like I'm so there are no games. I'm like
Yeah.
this is where I'm at, but I have an issue that's internal and it doesn't really come off. Like you may not even know it unless you're very, very close with me. And it's a commitment issue because I'm so used to playing games, which I don't do anymore, but like not ever really being so committed in a relationship. Like I'm always kind of one foot in, one foot out. Like I've even
Yeah. And then it's
heard
it's
that.
easier to not take things to heart if you're that way, if you're one foot in, one
Yes,
foot out. But this guy you're talking about, if he maybe his ex-wife got on his case about not having a big social
exactly.
circle, like you know what I mean? Like that. So like you might have struck a nerve too, where he's like, I have lots of
Exactly.
friends, and it's like, well, you're like, I'm just joking. I have no idea that you do or you don't,
But
right?
But it kind of goes down to also like me having an issue with commitment and maybe I'm always poking to push people away a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like maybe
yeah.
I could have subconsciously realized that and made jokes out of it to kind of make him uncomfortable. I do know I have that habit. Like it's not really as much of a game as it is a game because it's a commitment issue that turns into a game. Like I don't play any games except for always sort of subconsciously trying to keep most men at a little bit of a distance.
Hmm.
So there's never too much commitment and not too much involvement emotionally for myself, you know?
Yeah.
So it's again like another, like just like you said, like that's something like I only just realized like maybe a few months ago, really honestly, because the moment I start to have fun with someone, I will find a reason to end that situation.
I think that's pretty
So,
common. I think there's a lot of people that seem to do that, but for me, I think on the topic of games and whatever, I think I dating was such a necessary evil. I think like as you've mentioned, like I tend to be like a serial monogamist or whatever. Like I'm in a
mhm.
long relationship all the time. I don't think I have any desire. I like you might obviously get some enjoyment out of the process. I feel like I've to come circle back to your question about, do I like the hunt and do I like playing games or am I aware of playing games? I feel like I've always not liked it, and I've always felt that like that early stages that I think a lot of people find exciting. I think I found it to be like almost like unpleasant and like a necessary evil to sort of get through to get to something better.
There are a lot of people who don't like that. They don't like the beginning.
And I feel like that's
They like the
probably
familiarity.
yeah,
They
like
like that part.
where just circling back to your points, I think like that's where I'm probably at. Like I think it just that uncertainty and that feeling each other out, and like I think it's like starting a new job. Like it's so much better when you're established and you know what's what and the ins and outs and what to do and you're comfortable there. And I feel like that's similar in that like I don't like that early stage of the relationship where like you're still feeling each other out and all this. I think I just do what I can to avoid that, obviously.
Yeah.
Whereas some people might get excitement being in that uncertain stage, like getting a new job or getting a new car or getting a new place to live.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. They
that,
like the
they like the
change.
change and
That's
the
me.
new.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. And that's something I had to really work through. And
Yeah,
exact opposite. Like you like familiar I can never say that word familiarity.
familiar.
But I love change. Like I love the excitement. Even like you say jobs, like if anytime I've ever been fired, I'm like, "Ooh, let's see what's next."
Yeah,
Like
which is I
I'm
think
never
is it's a good quality you have to always look to the next stage, but I think it can obviously be a hindrance in some parts of your life. Like if I used to sort of bounce around with jobs and cars and other things looking for something, but I think that yeah, you could definitely it would be hard to get to the next phase of a relationship of like if you're excited by like sort of the initial bit.
Of course, and also I've even been told by one guy, he was like, "You're never gonna settle if you're always looking to see what else is out there." Like
Like
he
do
was
you
like,
have a
because there's
like the miss maybe what am I missing out on thing going
yes,
on?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
FOMO for sure. But it's funny because as I get older, I definitely don't have that. But just and the reason I'm even using myself as an example is because I think when you have to really outgrow a lot of these, because these are real issues. And the reality is, we all have issues to work on. And when you want to, like, now that I am old enough and I would like something serious, like, I noticed a couple things and I had to really sit down and think. And I stopped being manipulative in game playing when I was 27. Like, when I got out of that really, really bad relationship, it was the best experience for me because it really showed me actually how manipulative I can be. And I
Mhm.
was so disgusted with myself. So I was like, wow, like I I think that in every situation there are every both people have like what is it, like, you're both accountable,
Yeah.
but I don't believe it's always 50-50. And I would definitely say that 70% of the problems were me because I was feeding off, ripping him apart and being manipulative and winning everything was like always a battle. It was like a
Right.
winning battle. And I was yelling. I've never yelled. I've yelled one time since. One time when I'm really drunk.
I've never
Not
even
at,
seen you get
at a
mad. Like
significant.
I can't even imagine.
Oh my God, Lee, I know exactly. I remember like my everybody around me, like my family, and like I had a friend fly into town and he didn't live in Vancouver at the time. He lived somewhere else and he would only come for the summer. So he saw me the summer prior
Mhm.
and then the summer during. Like he came and he was like, "Oh my God, I don't even recognize you." And he, as my friend, told my ex, he's like, "You should break up with her." Like he's like, "Dump her fucking ass."
Well,
Like
some people, my wife and I talk about this all the time, but some people definitely bring out the worst in other people. Like you're just not a good match, you know?
exactly, exactly. And again, it's because I believe when you start with games, my sister has always said, like, how you start a relationship, how you pot a plant is how that plant's going to grow. So
Mhm.
if you plant it on top of some toxic bullshit soil, you're not going to have the best type of fucking flower.
Yes, exactly.
And
Yeah.
we've started that on toxic games, and that's what people really have to think about. Like, just because you want to get a guy interested or a girl interested and you're a little bit manipulative, don't forget every little manipulative thing you do, you're putting a negative, you're like literally putting something toxic, poison into that soil, and
Mhm.
that's going to ruin that flower. And I had put so many of these toxic fucking behavior seeds into it. And again, I'm so grateful, but like nobody recognized me. They like were like, I've never seen I've never yelled since then. Like only one time, again, only one time. And the guy was filming me because I was super drunk and I was super angry. But given I had just found out my dad had Parkinson's and I was just angry in general,
Right.
and I was the guy's like some random people like bullshit car accident thing, like, and they were like, I was like ready to explode anyways. It had nothing to
Yeah.
do with anything else, but it was great because I learned and I actually witnessed myself. I was like, I didn't even know I knew I was manipulative and I knew I played games, but I didn't know how far I could go. And I didn't know how capable I was of being such a toxic, extremely manipulative person.
Hmm.
And luckily I was young and I was able to change and it made me realize. But again, when you outgrow like that, I stopped. Like I moved to LA, I never had those situations again. I was so blunt. Like I would tell people, like, I'm not just going to be your girlfriend. I'm dating so many people. And I was like, take it or leave it. It's not a game. It's really out
Yeah.
there. But
It's funny how people view themselves and other people view you because like if someone asked me what you're like or what you were like, I would never have said toxic, manipulative, like none of these things, right? So obviously that's something you take into like relationships, I would guess, like romantic ones.
well,
But with you and I, like as friends, like I've never felt that you were anything but like I've always say you're like I'm like Sherry is so like overly positive and like motivated and like not really like dragged down by like the day-to-day bullshit of life. Like I feel like you're always like kind of, just positive in general. So it's funny in certain circumstances, obviously those traits come out with this toxic stuff that you don't like.
exactly. And it's funny you said it because like I had so many people say it to me. Like my mom was like, I have no idea who you are. Like I
Yeah.
don't know who this person is anymore. And the reality is because we think that playing a little bit of manipulative games is not going to be as detrimental as they are. Like
Hmm.
I thought I was initially getting him by doing these little manipulative things. And what I didn't realize is they were actually chipping at my insecurity. And
Hmm.
instead, every time I would like win and I felt like vindictive of winning, I also became more insecure because how I was winning wasn't natural to who I am.
Right.
And that's the problem because if you're winning somebody over with a mask, you got to keep on wearing that mask.
Yes.
And then you start to feel more like you don't feel loved. You don't feel like he loves you or she loves you. You feel like they like something you're not.
Yeah.
And I see this today. Like I have a guy friend who like got out of a long-term relationship and then became what he thought girls in LA like, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's true, girls in LA do like those certain things. There are girls in LA that like those things, I should say. But they aren't ones that match him. So he got himself a girlfriend and he had to keep this facade.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I turned to him one day and I said, "Do you even feel like she likes you? Because she doesn't like the real you. She
Yeah.
likes who you're pretending to be." And he's like, "No, I feel like shit every day." And that's the reality. And then I was like that too, but I was resentful for it, and then I would take it out on him.
Yeah.
And that's how people are, and that's the problem with games again. Like you can't win somebody over with a game because that's playing a game is not natural. It's not
Mhm.
normal. And keeping it up is just detrimental to your self-worth.
I think too, like we mentioned before with games, like some people meet people when they're in a certain phase of their life, and that phase is very
Oh,
short-lived. Like you say, so are you going to keep up that facade or that personality? We all go through phases, right? Like, I mean,
yeah,
can you
yeah.
imagine? I know of people that have like met in a very odd phase of their life and then
Mhm.
snapped out of that phase, and then they're left whole. The other person's like, "What am I gotten into here?" Like, I've started dating this person who had all these characteristics and these values, and those values are like totally different now. And they're like, "You've changed." It's like, well, really, I just went back to how I've always been, except for this short window where we met. So I think some stuff that comes across as games might be like just natural cycles of life that like people are changing and
That's
whatever.
true.
Like, like you and I too, like we've changed probably a lot over the years. And if we started dating when we were like 20 and we get to pushing 40, we're gonna be like, "Oh, you've changed and you've been playing games and you've been lying to me this whole time," or whatever, right? It's like, well, people just change too. So I think the games umbrella is pretty broad, right? There could be a lot of
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, sometimes they
deliberate
can't
and
even be deliberate.
right, yeah, and then some of it's like totally inadvertent, or unintentional, I imagine.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that's true. I guess when you put that into perspective, I think like, and I had to really evaluate myself. Like, I knew that a few months ago, I really decided that I would like a serious relationship. Like, I've been feeling that way for a while, but my actions didn't speak that way. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I stopped dating a bunch of people at once. That was not a problem. But I don't have like a very open, like I'm so open in friendships and stuff, but definitely not when someone's trying to like be serious with me because I love my life as it is and I am not very good at compromise
Mhm.
and because of that I keep people away. And so maybe I don't play games like in manipulative ways, but subconsciously I always kept them at a bay.
Yeah.
And so I had to really think about that. And so I think what we could advise like our listeners is when you're deciding to be in a serious relationship, because honestly, like only you have to evaluate yourself if you're trying to be serious. But
Mhm.
when you are, I guess again, like you should think about exactly like you said, what phase are you in your life? Like if what are you doing something today that you want to be doing in 10 years? Like are you doing hobbies? Like are you working out? Are you not wanting to work out? Like what is it that makes you who you are? Is it long term? Is it short term? Is it does it feel natural to you?
Yeah.
And then kind of thinking about things you think you do from insecurities that may not be serving you for a relationship,
Yeah,
you
if you
know?
can identify those things somehow, like with counseling or with talking to your friends or something. Yeah, it's just two sides of this um, discussion about the games. I think is going to be: are you playing any, and is the person you're interested in playing any, and how do you
Mhm.
recognize those signs, and what do you do about it?
Well, that's another thing too. Like, I think like we're kind of a, I mean, as much as some parts we hate being woke, but we're pretty woke when it comes to games. Like, I feel like now I can recognize them so easily. Like, I can't stand when a guy like starts name dropping or like, not just, I mean, I'm not talking like celebrity, but I guess like their car, their house, and people do that a lot in LA.
Hmm.
Or if they post a photo of like their fancy watch, I used to not care about that as much when I was younger. I didn't really think, but now I realize it's another game and it's another insecurity.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, why would you post like your Lamborghini if you don't want someone to like you for your money?
Yeah.
There's
Well,
like no,
guys are like
there's
that
no
too.
other
Like,
reason for
my
it.
friends will or people I don't know that well will start telling me stories about, getting in fights or doing whatever, like as if it's like impressive to me because I guess I look like someone that would be impressed by that.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm
physical
like,
fights.
this is
Yeah,
so exhausting. Like, I don't want to like add to this tit for tat discussion. I always try to like swing it away from that because with guys, it seems to go that way. This like one
that's a
upping.
Vancouver thing. I
Yeah,
swear to
so
God,
I
because
don't even get
physical fights
involved.
are big in Vancouver.
Yeah, I don't even get involved. I'm like, man, like I'm not impressed. Like people start talking these fight stories or other, or driving cars. Oh, I just 700 horsepower or whatever. Yeah, okay, great. Like, that's great. Like, I'm happy for you, but I think it comes. And again, I don't think it's a game. I think it's like an insecurity, which I guess is a kind of a game, but I don't think it's deliberate. They're just trying to fit in
One up
and
each other.
be confident or whatever. And I imagine if you meet a guy and you're on a date and the guy wants to impress you and he's probably only got so many things in his bag of tricks. I don't know if he's just trying to like make conversation, trying to impress you, he's just insecure, like what, like maybe a lot of people don't have a lot going on, like maybe they're just kind of boring people. And so like they start talking about the things they own, maybe that's their deal, right?
Yeah, and it's so funny because I think that we get to an age where we see right through it, and you're like, "Oh, like fuck, man, work on yourself. If you gotta drop that stuff."
Yeah.
I want to say one thing about the fighting thing. It's so funny. When I first moved to LA, I was like, "Oh, like nobody has bar fights here," and then I realized because everyone gets like actually arrested and sued here, they don't
Yeah.
like
And
they don't
guns.
just throw a punch. Yeah,
I mean, I know
and
California is
exactly.
not super gun crazy, but yeah, I imagine my uncle
But
was like that. Like we got into it. We were in Washington State and we got into it in traffic with someone and he was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Fuck him." Right. And he's like, "Man, people have fucking guns down here. Like, you can't
yeah,
just behave
yeah,
like an idiot." So I imagine it is definitely a Vancouver thing where people
it
just,
is. I had a girlfriend that moved from Miami. I'll never forget. We were in Vancouver and she was driving. We were going on that Granville Street Bridge.
yeah.
And she guy cut her off and then like they're like she, because we're mouthy in Vancouver because it can go as far as it goes. It's not gonna go past the punch.
Yeah.
And she was like throwing up her finger and then yelling at him and then she's like pointing at the glove box. I'm like, why are you pointing at the glove box? And she's like, it means I'm packing. And I was like, no.
Not
In
here it
Vancouver,
doesn't.
yeah, it means I have insurance papers.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck are you trying to say? Like, we,
Yeah. It is a different culture, right? So I imagine, yeah, but yeah,
and so it is completely different in America. Like, if you're gonna go out and fight, you might get shot. So people
yeah.
don't go. But in Vancouver, bar fights are like it gets there so quick,
Oh, it's just something to
So
do, man.
it is, it is something to do, but
But
it
yeah,
is
I think
funny.
it does come back to the games thing where people are trying to impress other people, and it's so. I think, like I said, I think the category is basically split in half between deliberate shit and inadvertent shit.
Inadvertent. Yeah, because I will say, and it's funny you say because I swear I do so much inadvertent now, and I have to catch myself all the time. The deliberate stuff is sometimes very, 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 and I can say sometimes because some people have been doing it, and I was doing it for so long, but it's habitual, and you have to not learn. You have to train yourself out of it, like
Yeah,
by not saying or doing shit that's manipulative. But that was very for me. It was very easy to stop when it was deliberate, but it was the inadvertent stuff, the things I hadn't noticed I was doing
mhm,
and kept getting called out. Like so many people, I've been told with almost every date, like you are not emotionally available. And I was like, what? I feel like I am because I'm not playing games. And it's like, well, but actually I was so not and subconsciously so not emotionally available. And I have, so I think you really have to sit down. And the thing is, people are so aware now. And because they're so aware, they really assess a situation, decide if they want to partake. Like if you're a guy who wants to get married, you may not want to go on a second date with a girl who comes off so emotionally unavailable. And
mhm,
so if you're inadvertently coming off some way, or subconsciously dropping things like, oh, like I, for instance, love to joke the gold digging jokes and whatever, right?
yeah.
But I was recently told by my girlfriend, actually, she was like, you're not actually a gold digger. Otherwise, you would have been taken already.
But you're like, I
But
wouldn't say it if I was, like you wouldn't
yeah,
make a
but
joke
I
about it
wouldn't
if you
joke about
were.
it. And I
Yeah,
joke about it 24/7, but she did. And also, like a guy I used to date that I'm very, very good friends with, he tells me all the time, he's like, I love your jokes. They're funny. But he's okay. He's so confident, comfortable with himself. When we first met, he's like, I didn't mind, but he's like, I can see why on a first or second date, a guy is like, oh fuck, like
yeah.
she's some gold digging. He's like, maybe hold off on those jokes.
Well, just
And
joking in general, I feel like guys are insecure. I feel like I would say a lot of guys are insecure based on what people tell me, and so I think that your confidence and like would be you'd probably find, but who gives a shit? Like if you find out right away the guy's not confident, not secure, then well, fuck whatever, right? But I think you're gonna like catch people that are insecure very quickly if you make jokes and what. And I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying that's what you're gonna find, right?
It is true, right? But it is true. And like, even if we take, and I agree with you, right? Because I always feel like, well, if you can't handle it now, what is it going to do later? But
Yeah.
it is funny because I have even friendships with people I didn't joke initially. Like, even, my best friend today, like, I didn't joke with her initially because I didn't think she could handle, but actually she could handle it so well. But
Hmm.
I think if I had joked with her initially, she would have just thought I was rude.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so maybe it is, you are right. Like, maybe you do just sort of take it a little bit easier. But the point is, like, I say this like when I go out with guys or when I match with guys now, and they're like I just matched with this guy the other day. He's like, I have 4 offices. Each office makes like $100,000 a month. I said, why would you say that to me?
Yeah. That's
We
just
haven't even met, and you are setting yourself up to be used.
I think
You
that's
know,
just a confidence thing. I honestly,
it is a
I've
confidence
never
thing.
felt the need to like brag. I mean, in
Yeah.
recent years, like I think when I was younger, I was more insecure because like just quickly I was thinking I did date a girl who was like pretty funny and like confident, and I feel like at that stage of my life that somehow like screwed me up because I was used to being like the funny confident one, and now all of a sudden I'm like I was caught off guard, and I was probably not as secure as I am now and that kind of thing. And I always remember being like kind of put off by that or something. Like it didn't sit very well with me. But now that I'm older, I think back to a lot of the shit she said. I'm like, man, that's really funny. Like I can't believe I was kind of giving her like I don't know. I was almost like trying to like play her
One up
down,
her.
like like sort of push her down so I could be the center of attention or something. And now I'm
Huh.
way more sort of sure of myself and confident, whatever. That like I just think that's funny. Like like I'm like, oh man, that's like really funny. Like, but yeah, it's I think it's a lot of it just stems from people being insecure, and guys are like very funny about the girl taking charge, or the girl being funny, or the girl being like the sort of charismatic one. I feel like now, like to me, like that's fine. Like I think that's funny, but like when I was younger, I definitely felt like she was like overshadowing me or something.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's true. It's true. Like, because when we're younger, we can't even identify that. You feel something,
You
and you're
just
like,
feel
I don't know
off,
why.
yeah,
I'm like a little resentful here, but I can't figure it out.
yeah. And now, of course, like you grow up and you matured, but all of so much of it comes back to like just knowing these things and how to handle yourself and whatever. But
Navigate, yeah.
yeah, staying away from the whole if you can try and identify if you are playing a game where someone is playing one on you, and then try and get away from that, because some people might not even know. And if you say to them, hey man, like do you or do you not want to be in a relationship? Oh, I totally do. Okay, well then why are you doing this or why are you doing that, right? But I think that just comes with age and maturity and experience. You can spot a game a mile away, and then maybe spot yourself inadvertently doing one.
I think the biggest thing is to hold yourself accountable. And if
Yeah.
you are looking for something serious, you need to be as authentically yourself as possible, because in the end of the day, you don't want to resent someone for not loving you for who you are. So be authentic to yourself. I think people are very well aware of when you're bullshitting or playing games. Like, just like when this guy was name dropping how much his company makes
Yeah.
every month, I didn't find that attractive. I actually found that as insecure.
Yeah.
Whereas like 10 years ago, I might have just been attracted. I was attracted to it. It's not even me. So people are more aware, and they're aware of they're not attracted to the bullshit. It's
Yeah.
not, people see red flags now and they don't bulldoze through them like they used to. They're more like, oh fuck, do I want to be in the situation where I have to fix somebody? Because we don't have patience like that anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it's really about focusing on being as authentic inside and out, your natural self, and finding someone. This world is overpopulated. There's always someone who's going to love your natural self,
Yeah.
inside and out, and then really just focusing on presenting that. And then if it's not working out in your dating life and you're still wondering what's going on, like maybe you're not getting second or third dates or fourth, really kind of evaluating what kind of energy you're putting off. Like,
Yeah.
that's really important. Like, I kept being told I'm not emotionally available, and I never took a moment to evaluate what I'm doing that's making me unemotional,
Did you, yeah,
not
did anyone
available.
tell you why they felt that way? Like they felt you
I
weren't like like
They
I
just would
think
always say that. They would
I
say
think
like,
there's a
you
misconception that because you're positive and you have that sort of energy, I think people think you're just not that grounded, you know what I mean? Like you're not that sort of invested in in reality because you're so like happy, you're so easygoing or whatever. And it's like that can be
And some
true. And
and
also
sometimes it gives off the vibe of like, I don't really need you.
yeah, like carefree or I could
Yeah.
take it or leave it, right? And there's nothing wrong with I would never say change, who you are or anything like that. But I could see if I had to guess, I'd be like, guys probably think that you're happy go lucky and sort of casual and like not really looking for anything serious. And if I had to guess, I would say that's probably what people would say. But like I know you and I just know like that's how you are. But like some people, if I met you today, I'd be like, oh, this girl's like really sort of easygoing and sort of happy and not that serious about anything and probably just kind of flitting around through life, right? So maybe that's people mistake that for emotional unavailability of some kind because you're not just, down in the dumps. You're just kind of doing your thing.
I think it's one thing to use exactly what you said, but also one thing you hit nail on the head was I could take it or leave it. I have that personality, and I really did feel that way. But the reality is, like, I once had a guy recently do that with me, like I could take it or leave it, and because that's also like leftover behavior, I think, from the game a
Mhm.
little bit, like of just never being like fully invested.
Yeah, like you don't want to be the
And
one that was like gone all in and the guy's like,
yes,
actually, never mind, fuck you.
yes. And I yeah, yeah, and I had a guy recently have that attitude, and I had to be like, "Are you actually interested in me?" And he was like, "Yeah, so much." And I was like, "Well, it doesn't come off that way." When I had it
Yeah.
mirrored back to me, I was like, "Oh, like that's why." And that again is it's also a little insecurity too. So that's what I mean when I say like really evaluate if someone people had been saying it to me for years. You're not emotionally available. And I never sat to wonder what energy I'm giving off.
Yeah.
It's great to be positive. It's great to be all those things, but take it or leave it when you're not like really making effort. Like and I've had like I remember when you were asking like has a guy told you before. I was trying to remember, but I did actually. I've had a lot of guys say you're not emotionally available. I had one guy very specifically tell me like, you never seem like if I tell you you want to hang out Wednesday, you're like sure, whatever, whatever works. You're never like yeah, I do. Let's
Yeah.
So he never felt like I cared to hang out with him, and I never made it seem like I did.
Oh yeah.
And I had to evaluate that, and that is true. Like people don't like that. They want to feel if you're interested in someone, show your interest.
Yeah. Yeah.
They want to feel wanted. Nobody wants to invest their time with and I felt that back when that guy was like that. I was like, I'm not going to invest my energy in him. He doesn't seem like it matters that much. And it's true. Like you want if you're interested, show interest because that person is going to mirror that, and
Yeah.
feel wanted and you're going to get the same energy back that you need in order to grow a relationship. But
Well,
if you're like whatever, they're
it
going to be like whatever.
It might be like you say, where it's residual from the games side of things. Like you're like, I don't
I
want to
think
show my
so.
hand. You know what I mean? Like I don't want
Yeah.
to be vulnerable. I don't want to get rejected. So, but when you even just simple things like being like, yeah, I'm excited to hang out with you. Let's do something. Right? I mean, it's a little bit vulnerable, but it's not like all the way. But at least it shows, like literally to be like, yeah, take it or leave it. You know where the fuck I'm at. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, what guy would wanna be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I definitely wanna hang out with you," when you're like, "Whatever,"
But that's
you
from
know?
like you say from years of having your guard up and not wanting to show
Yeah,
your hand, right? So
exactly, it's exactly that, and that's why I really mean you have and I didn't even notice that, like, even though people said over and over and over again, I was like, "But I feel like I'm showing I'm just being the easygoing person I am," but it's like, no, nobody wants to invest when they're not feeling wanted and
yeah.
needed, and that's what I mean when I say, like, when I mirrored like, showed that guy a mirror and was like, "Dude, when you say these things, that's what attracts" like, you say you don't want someone using you for your money, but you're talking about your money.
Mhm.
And they're like, "No, I'm just talking about what I'm proud of myself." And it's like, "No, you could say I've built a business without saying this is how much the business earns," you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
So people, you really got to think about what you're portraying and making sure it's healthy and natural. And what, like, if I want a guy to be invested in me, I also have to show my hand. So
Mhm.
that's what I mean. Like, if you want something, if you don't want to be used for your money, don't talk about your money. If
Yeah.
you want to be loved for your painting and art, show your painting and art. Like it's just common sense. Like you
Mhm.
need to portray and show what it is that you're hoping to gain from the other person.
Mhm.
So I think that's all I've got
Yeah,
for
no, that
this.
sounds good. I think, it's just like we've been saying, like, just trying to be self-aware if you're in it, sort of accidentally or whatever, playing games and why are you doing that? And then be aware of other people doing it and and be aware that they may not be doing it on purpose. And like you say, you just take it to them. Hey, do you want this? Do you want that? Like, where are we at here? And then don't be afraid to pull a plug if it's like you're not on the same page, right?
That's exactly it too. Like if you talk to people about, like, if you're interested in someone, like, when that guy told me, like, "I'm interested in you, but you do this take it or leave it behavior, I don't really appreciate that." I was like, "Oh, okay, I apologize." It gave me
Yeah.
an opportunity to, or how I told that guy, like, "Hey, I think my jokes affected you because I noticed this is the only time you call me now." I
Mhm.
gave him a chance to evaluate and adjust,
Yeah.
like, be fair with people, understand that we are all insecure. There's not one fucking person here that's in this world that's not insecure about something.
Yeah, and I think
So,
everybody ultimately wants to do the right thing and connect with someone, and if you approach it properly and just pitch it to them like you have done or you've had it pitched to you, and you're old enough and mature enough to like to take that under advisement, you can move forward and like actually get somewhere, right? Instead of multiple people telling you that you're not emotionally available, you can try and make some minor adjustments to to show that you are.
exactly it. I loved it.
Hmm.
All
God
right.
damn it, we're smart.
We're geniuses.
It's
If only we
frightening.
had figured this out years ago.
Yes.
All right, well, guys, don't forget to follow us on the Perfect X. That's the perfect underscore X, the letter X on Instagram. If you've got questions, emails at the perfect X. Again, just the letter X at Hotmail, and follow us on the perfect underscore X. Oh, just the perfect X actually on TikTok, Spotify, and Apple.
Get us on ICQ.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Okay. I'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, you bet. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.